You know the stories. I mean, they're absolutely iconic. A world-ending flood, a baby in a basket floating down a river. We all know them from the Bible. But what if I told you their roots run so much deeper, back to a time and a place, long, long before the Bible was ever written? What if these stories were part of a kind of shared library of myths passed around for centuries all across the ancient world? Well, let's dig in.
Okay, so let's start with a big one. Maybe the biggest. A global, world-ending flood. The first name that probably pops into your head is Noah, right? Building that ark. But was his story the original? The answer to that question, well, it takes us deep into the ancient past, and it might just change how we look at these foundational stories forever.
So here's the central idea for our whole journey today. The biblical authors, they weren't writing in a vacuum. Not at all. They were part of this huge, interconnected world. Just try to imagine a kind of shared cultural library. A collection of stories, themes, and big ideas that stretched all across the ancient Near East. They were pulling books off those shelves, and then, crucially, they were adding their own incredible, unique chapters to it.
And honestly, there is no better place to see this shared library in action than with the story of the Great Flood. The parallels here are they're so striking, they're absolutely impossible to ignore.
What's really mind-blowing is when you look at the timeline. Seriously. You can see right here that Mesopotamian texts, like the Atrahasis epic, they're telling a flood story that is centuries, maybe even 1,000 years older than the version we read in the book of Genesis. This wasn't a new story for them, it was an ancient one.
And this is where it gets wildly specific. I mean, look at the plot points. Some divine beings decide to wipe out humanity. One good man gets a secret warning. He's told to build a massive boat and save the animals. The boat eventually lands on a mountain, and the hero gets out and makes a sacrifice. Does that sound at all familiar? Yeah. The narrative bones, they're exactly the same.
But these connections don't just stop with the flood, not even close. They go deeper, right to the very beginning of the world itself, and even to the laws that hold society together.
So how is the world made? Well, the Babylonian epic, Enuma Elish, tells this crazy story of a violent, cosmic battle where the world is literally built from the corpse of a chaos monster. Now, Genesis describes a peaceful, deliberate ordering of a dark, watery nothingness. The details are totally different. One super violent, the other is serene. But the core idea? It's identical. Creation is the act of a divine power bringing order out of chaos.
An eye for an eye. Come on, we've all heard that phrase a million times. But do you know where it actually comes from? Well, this quote right here, this is from the Code of Hammurabi. It's a legal text from ancient Babylon that's almost 4,000 years old. And of course, that exact same principle, an eye for an eye, the fancy term is lex talionis, is a fundamental cornerstone of the legal code we find in the Bible. This just goes to show you that the cultural borrowing wasn't just about cool epic stories. It went all the way down to the laws that structured their entire society.
The parallels also get really personal. They show up in the lives of these iconic heroes, in the way people wrestled with suffering, and even in the very definition of what it meant to be wise.
Okay, listen closely to this story and see if it rings a bell. A baby is born in total secrecy to save him from a deadly decree. His mom takes him, puts him in a waterproof basket, and sets him afloat on a great river, all to save his life.
Yeah, I'm guessing that sounds pretty familiar. We're all thinking of the story of Moses from the book of Exodus, right? But guess what? He wasn't the first.
More than 1,000 years before Moses was even born, the legend of a Mesopotamian king, Sargon of Akkad, tells the exact same origin story. I mean, the details are so precise. The secret birth, the basket, the river, being rescued and raised to greatness. It's clear this was a well-known archetype for what a great leader's origin story was supposed to sound like in the ancient world.
And then there's this other powerful character type, the righteous sufferer. This is a figure you see in literature who is totally good, completely blameless, yet they go through the most horrific tragedy. And it forces them, and us, the readers, to ask that universal question, why do bad things happen to good people?
Centuries before the incredible story of Job, a Babylonian text often called the poem of the righteous sufferer explored the same agonizing theme. Both stories tackle one of the deepest questions of human existence, which just shows that people all across the ancient world were wrestling with the exact same profound mysteries.
Okay, now let's switch gears a little bit to wisdom. This piece of advice comes from an ancient Egyptian text. Pretty straightforward, right? It's just practical, moral advice on how to live a good, peaceful life.
Now listen to this verse from the biblical book of Proverbs. Wait a minute. The language is almost word for word. It's so close, in fact, that a lot of scholars are convinced that the author of Proverbs was actually working directly from the Egyptian text. This is probably one of the clearest examples of direct literary borrowing you can find anywhere. It's incredible.
So, we've seen these incredible parallels in epic myths, in legal codes, in hero stories, and in simple, practical wisdom. What does it all mean? What does it add up to?
So let's just do a quick recap. We've got a shared story of a great flood, a shared theme of creation from chaos, a shared legal principle of an eye for an eye. We've seen a shared origin story for heroes, a shared philosophical struggle with suffering, and even shared lines of wisdom literature. The connections, they are literally everywhere you look.
So what is the big takeaway here? This is so important. This isn't about copying. Not at all. It's about reinterpreting. The biblical writers were taking these powerful, popular stories that everyone in their world already knew, and they were reframing them to make a radical, brand new point about their vision of a single moral God. They were using familiar building blocks to construct something totally new and revolutionary.
And that leaves us with one final big question. How does knowing this shared history, how does it change what these stories mean for us today? Does it somehow diminish them? Or does it actually enrich them by showing that they are Israel's unique, powerful answer to the timeless questions that every ancient culture was asking? It puts the Bible right where it belongs, in the middle of the great ongoing human conversation about who we are, where we came from, and why we're here. Something to think about.